I am here with Matt Weber, who is not only one of my most amazing clients, someone I look up to incredibly as a mentor, but also somebody who has had an incredible transformation and runs an incredibly successful business while having a full family and a full life. So we're going to talk a little bit about when he started with me, some of the things that he went through. He has a past in bodybuilding, doing competitions, things like that, and how what we're doing that allows him to stay in the shape that you guys see is a lot more sustainable than probably some of the things that he was doing in his 20s. So if you just kind of want to give me a little bit of background, how you got into health and fitness in the first place, and some of the things that you were encouraged to do when you were younger, and then we can kind of work our way towards life now.
Cool. Yeah. So right from the start, I started actually lifting weights before you were supposed to lift weights in the gym. I think it was like 13, and
yeah.
I couldn't lift weights unless I had a personal trainer. So,
believe it or not, this year they came out and now said the American Pediatrics Association changed it from 18 to 13.
Nice.
This year.
Yeah,
so
I had to have a trainer with me
thing.
at all times.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't until you were,
right.
I think it was like 16.
Right, exactly.
Like so I've been working out forever. Typical high school kid, it was like get bigger, get bigger, get bigger.
Right.
Powerlifting, stuff like that. And then in college, that's when I started really kind of focusing more on diet, trying to get bigger.
Right.
And I mean, we're talking 2007, 2008, and I was like pro hormone.
Yeah,
yeah. How are these dudes so big? And then I find out it's
you
pro
go down to the store and
get
get whatever, the little bottle of whatever it was.
And that led to the bodybuilding part, and I did that. I started that. I want to say my first competition, I was probably 22.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And that's when...
What did the prep look like for that?
So I thought going into it, it was like, okay, I hired a coach. I'm going to do a bunch of workouts with him, and that's what bodybuilding is.
Yeah.
He's like, you already know how to work out.
Right.
Here's what really matters. It's diet.
Mm-hmm.
And the diets worked very well as far as the result, but it was, it was very much like low carb, low fat, high protein. And then, the level we were competing at, it wasn't drug free. I wasn't doing a natural contest. I had already played with pro hormones and actual steroids. And then when I got into the bodybuilding, that's when I really got exposed to the dark side of it.
Yep.
And for that first show, I mean, it was a lot of drugs.
Yeah.
And then I did decent.
On top of a low carb diet and everything else. Right.
And that's where it's like, to kind of defend steroids, if you will, like just hormone therapy or a small dose or a small cycle, if you will.
Yeah.
I don't truly believe you're going to have roid rage from that. But when you're depleting yourself and you're replacing calories with drugs, you lose your freaking mind.
100%.
Like I lost my mind. The second show
you see it with so many competitors, and it's one of the sides of bodybuilding that I feel like is not talked about a lot, and probably only the partner of the competitor is the one who really knows what they're going through. Yeah. But I feel like that stress and that kind of just aggression that comes with that I see with so many of my friends who compete is something that is often not talked about and not addressed, and the impact that has on your relationships and how it's not really sustainable if you have a family and you have kids and there's no way, right?
No, and you get in this mindset where it's like you're getting shredded and the people around you are not used to seeing that. So you're getting compliments left and right. Like I looked like a skeleton on my second show, and that's when we were basically replacing food almost completely with drugs.
Wow.
But I was an asshole.
Yeah.
I was edgy. And then, I'd go to the gym and have this little spike of energy and endorphins, and then it fell on top of the world.
Yep.
And it'd fall off. And it was like,
yeah.
I didn't want to talk to people. I was like, I was working a job where I was a manager, and I was like, what can I do to get in and out of here and not interact with anyone?
Wow.
I felt sick.
It was affecting you that much.
Oh yeah. It was bad. But I also got down to like 2% body fat. We had to actually feed me up 2 weeks into the show because we had stripped me too much.
You got too shredded. Yeah. So a lot of things that were probably unnecessary. I mean, if that's the case, right? Not to mention the drugs, like you said, they do go a long way when you're depleted, but from a perspective of longevity and everything else, you're in your early 20s, right? None of us are thinking shit through in our early 20s.
No.
But when you're in your 30s and you have a couple of kids, you can't have a couple of kids if you're doing all that stuff. And you can't start a family. And B, once you have a family, you can't really be on those same things because like you said, the mood is just, it's not real. Especially if you have a business and everything else, you're going to start snapping on somebody, and it's going to lead to something negative. Yeah.
Well, and I'm kind of glad you mentioned that because that was a big thing, was having kids. So I'm competing, coming out of college. I was in college for my first show, and then coming out of college, like wasn't really thinking about family planning at that time. And it was heavy drugs. That was my goal. I was like, I'm going to keep doing this bodybuilding thing. And then it was after my second show, we were ramping up, and these were heavy doses. Like, I'm talking like a gram of test, a gram of EQ a week, like a gram. So you know how much that is. That's a lot. Yeah. And something came up, and I was like, I want to have kids at some point, so I'm gonna come off and like I need to get my blood.
And thank God you did at that time.
And I did, and dude, my testosterone got down to 50, like total
50.
Total, not
after coming off.
Yeah, and so I went to this hormone doctor, and he's like, if you're able to have kids, it's going to be very hard. Yeah. And I was like, fuck, I screwed everything up. Yeah. Like I wanted to be a father. Right. You know, I knew I wanted to be a father, and I'm like, I screwed that up over freaking bodybuilding. Over something. Yeah. I know. It's amazing how people get caught up in it, and they start doing things that have nothing to do with their lifelong goals, and it's just all instant gratification. But you mentioned you're getting compliments left and right. It's so hard to give that up. It's almost like addicting. It is. When you're shredded and everyone is telling you how amazing you look, it's like, yeah, you want a family, but you're like, I love how I feel. I love the fact that every room I walk into, everybody tells me like, dude, you look amazing. You look this way. So to make that transition and make that decision can be really hard for people. And some people never get there. Well, think about this too. You're talking about how good it feels to get those compliments. Mm-hmm. But really what you fear when you're at that point is, well, if I get out of shape, people are going to ask me why I'm out of shape. Why I'm out of shape. That's so much worse, because you're like... I know that better, and trust me. Yeah. Right?
So when you're in the whole body when you're in the nutrition field, you have to stay in shape, right? So I completely get that. You're right. So there's this fear of like, well, if I stop taking these things, am I not going to look this way anymore? Yeah. And are people going to start being like, why don't you look like that anymore? Yeah, like, why'd you let yourself go? Right, why'd you let yourself go? When it's a totally unrealistic When in actuality, you're probably living a more healthier life. Yeah, but some of my friends are like, I'm glad he stopped doing that, because he looks like a freaking skeleton. Yeah, 100%. No, I appreciate you. I mean, I appreciate you sharing all that. Let's talk about bodybuilding a little bit when you're in your 20s, how many shows you did, what it looked like coming out of those shows and things like that. So how many shows did you do when you were younger? So I did 3. Okay. I did my first show, it was here. And second show was in California, and then third show was here. And actually, this is kind of crazy. The third show was after I had basically come off everything. Oh, really? I was just running HRT, and I told my coach at the time, I was like, I'm not doing the drugs all again. The extra stuff. So I'm like, I'll do TRT. And a couple diuretics, and that's it. Right. I placed the best that one. Isn't that funny? Yeah, and I looked 10 times better. Yeah. Well, and right now, I mean, you're on a fraction of what I was taking at the other shows. Yeah, exactly. And you're on nothing more than, I believe, HRT right now. Yep. Right. Exactly. And I mean, you're on, we've got you on what, 540 carbs a day. Yeah. And you walk around with a 6-pack 7 days a week. Yep. So it does, you start to realize, I think a lot of people get caught up in the drugs early, because that's the whole, more drugs are going to be more muscle. More drugs, more muscle. Like you said, a gram of EQ, a gram of test, stuff like that. So unnecessary, right? Like, dude, look what you look like right now. Right. Literally with no pump or anything, no drugs in your system, 500 plus carbs a day. And I mean, I see your check-in photos every week. Yeah. You look like you could step on stage in 2 weeks. Right. Or 1 week. I mean, literally pull your water and you're ready to step on stage. Right. It's pretty crazy. And I feel so much better. Well, that's the biggest thing. And I think a lot of people, there's this fear of coming off. Yeah. Because what are people going to think of me when my arms aren't as big? What are people going to say when I'm not as vascular? What are people going to, and you almost get into this place of like, I don't know how to come off. I've seen so many friends who intend on doing one cycle that then end up getting like addicted and never know how to come off. Yeah. Never come off. Yeah. And fortunately, you were able to rescue things that, I don't want to say rescue, but correct things in time to be able to have a family. But a lot of these guys, they don't. They do it for 10, 15 years straight. And then they decide they want to have a family when they're in their early 30s and find out that they're never going to be able to. Yeah. And that's really where the blessing of the family planning came in, because it's such a bigger thing. Like, it's so much. You can put priority over like, I can fall out of shape to start a family. Right. Exactly. And really, that's where you kind of trust falling. Yeah. And now you don't. That's the great part. Right. Like, you don't have to be. Wish I could go back to whatever. You can 23-year-old Matt and be like, dude. Yeah, dude. It's gonna be fine. You didn't need to do all this, right? Yeah. No, I know. Like, you can go to Christmas at the Princess. You can go to La Hacienda. You can get dinner, and you're not going to be tripping out. Yeah. So that's fantastic that you've gotten to this point. That's good. So I want to talk a little bit about what you did to get ready for a couple of the shows that we just discussed, right? When you were prepping for the shows, because you and I actually, we haven't talked about this. What were some of the things your coaches had you do that you don't have to do right now that you have realized fall in the category of, you know how much I love this phrase, unnecessary complexities?
Yeah. So it like, if you could refine eating clean as like low as possible, like it was eating clean.
Yeah.
It was like,
were you given macros to be able to fill with foods that you want? Or were you given like 150 grams of oatmeal, 100?
It was like, here's meal 1 through 8
for the day,
the exact foods. So you'd be like oatmeal and, you know, egg
and
whites.
you just ate that, like you just ate that
whatever.
every
like
day.
Unseasoned.
And you're a super disciplined dude. So
like I wouldn't have a stick of gum because I didn't want to throw anything off. Like I would eat exactly that.
You'd avoid like 5-calorie sticks of gum.
Yeah, like the first show was 12 weeks of like, I didn't screw up that diet once. Like not a single time did I screw up that diet.
Yeah.
From vacation, whatever, it was like either I just wouldn't go on that vacation or I would make sure there was zero chance that I was going to miss one piece of food.
And what you just said there is honestly, I don't want to say like the saddest part because you obviously live an incredible life, but you'd go on vacation and you wouldn't have anything on vacation.
You'd miss out.
And now you and I talk all the time. You're like, hey dude, the family and I went up north, or we went up to Minnesota, or wherever it is. And I didn't track for these couple of days, but I feel like I came back really good. And I feel like you have such a better understanding of how to eat at restaurants and how to eat out and how to eat at family functions than if you're not given any information. Like you mentioned, let's say it's 100 grams of oatmeal. Let's say one morning you don't want oatmeal. What if you want cereal, right? Like you need to learn how to do that. Or you don't have oatmeal because you're on vacation. So you need to learn how to understand, like, hey, the kids and the wife were all going down for breakfast. I'm not having oatmeal at whatever. How much bread do I, how much toast do I want? How much of this do I want to be able to stay on track? And now you're at a place where you've put in the work, I feel like, to gain the understanding that you don't stress anymore. I remember when we first started working together, you were like hesitant to go on vacations and things like that. You're like, I don't want to mess up. I don't want to do this. And I'm like, dude, you're going to do fine. And then after you kept realizing like,
trusting myself,
as long as I really don't exceed my calories too much, it doesn't set me back at all. Now I feel like in the last probably 6 to 12 months have had more freedom, whether it's Halloween, whether it's Thanksgiving, whether it's traveling over the summer, whatever, than probably you have in a long time. Definitely more than what you had last year.
Yeah, and I think it's the flexibility too. It's like,
there you go.
I trust myself to do the things, and
you know it works.
Exactly.
Even with the flexibility. Exactly.
But back to the bodybuilding part, it was so strict, and it's such a hardcore bodybuilding way of looking at it that you think if you eat a bagel instead of oatmeal, you're failing at your diet. You're not having the right carbs.
Even though they're both 50 grams of carbs.
Right. That doesn't exist. That doesn't exist in that old school.
In that old school way, right?
Yeah, you've cheated and failed your diet.
You cheated because you had the bagel. Even if they were the same and they affect your body the same way, it wasn't the food that was on your list.
Exactly.
That is the biggest problem with meal plans right there. What was it that made you come to the realization that you needed something more sustainable than what you were doing during those bodybuilding days?
Yeah, so really what it came down to was I knew how to get in shape, but it was only one way. And that was like, not necessarily starve, but like, I'd have to diet.
Restrictive, right?
Restrictive, so I had to make more sacrifices. I would feel worse. I'd have to put in more cardio. And so like, I could get shredded on a dime. Like you give me 4 weeks and I get shredded, but I'm like,
you're not living any life while you're getting shredded. And as soon as you start living life,
like a week, because then I'd go, okay, now I'm going to go on vacation, and then I would fade, and then a week later I'm right back to where I was. I wasn't out of shape when you met me, but I would like that's what like kind of inspired me. As I'm like, I see this dude, I'm like, is this guy getting ready for a show? And then like weeks and months go by, I'm like, he still looks like he's getting ready for a show. Like, what's this guy's deal? I found you on Instagram.
Staying lean year round instead of having the ups and downs.
Yeah. And so I saw your stuff and I was like, okay, I've heard of this macro dieting. It's bullshit, obviously. That was what I thought.
That's what everybody thinks who's been in bodybuilding.
Because it's just so like forbidden.
It is,
And then I'm like, but I see him in the gym, and I'm just going to ask him. So I asked you about it, and you're like, dude, let me blow your mind. And it was just out of curiosity of like, okay, maybe it's not a hoax. And so I kind of accidentally stumbled into it, and I was like, oh my God.
I think we have a picture that's week 1 and week 4.
Yeah.
And you change, like you said, in 4 weeks you can get shredded. I just think you didn't realize you could also get shredded not having to do all the extra stuff. And in 4 weeks it was like I mean, I post that picture of you and it was like insane. It was like, holy shit, this dude completely transformed, but you weren't doing all of those same things as before. And I think I told you, I was like, give me 1 month. Let's just see what happens. And we did 1 month and it was like, you were eating more food, more carbs. You weren't restricting the choices. You were getting to pick the foods you wanted. And you still, I mean, we'll throw up the picture, but you still transformed like crazy in 4 weeks in the same way you would have following a super strict diet that had the same macros. And I think that was what you made you realize, like, hey, it really just does come down to numbers. Like a bagel and a bowl of oatmeal really aren't that much different if I'm faced with one because I'm at a meeting one morning and I have to have a bagel. You know, it's not the end of the world, right?
And I mean, we've tested that. I've tested it. I'm like, let's just see if I just like really just eat garbage carbs. Right. And we did, and it didn't change anything.
No, I know it really did.
Like I'm
not
that that's
better.
The best, right.
It's not the best thing in the world,
I
but
know there's micronutrients in healthier food. Like I know all that, but like here's my kind of thought on that is like, it's really great when you start learning macro dieting to eat those foods, to eat candy, to test it, because then you can trust yourself. Right. And you're learning using food you enjoy. And then once you learn and get that good habit, then it's like, okay, now I'm going to start more meal prepping. I'm going to eat. Right.
The majority of your diet is still healthy. You just understand now that if your wife and kids want to go out to get dinner on one night, you don't have to say no, or you don't have to be the awkward guy at the table who pulls out a Tupperware dish.
Or if I want to have some Sour Patch Kids.
Right. You can have some
It's not going to
destroy you.
I'm not cheating. I'm not, like, there's no guilt involved.
It's X amount of carbs. You don't eat Sour Patch Kids every day. Right. It's not going to undo any of your progress. Right. That is exactly it. That's perfect.
I think too, there's how you look at like success versus being successful. Right. And so success would be like, I got into the best shape of my life, but no one talks about staying in the best shape of their life.
There you go. Yeah, I like that.
Being successful. This is more like being successful.
Achieving success as opposed to being successful. It's like,
dude, I've been in the best shape of my life for the past 2 years.
I know. Yeah.
Like
that's with no drugs.
Wild. Yeah. Before I was like, I'm like, people set goals. I'm going to get in the best shape of my life.
And then lose it. They're already planning to lose it.
For a vacation or something.
For a vacation that
I'm going to stay in the best shape of my life. Yeah, this is how you do that.
100%. You nailed it. All right. So let's talk a little bit about the nutrition that we have you on right now, right? Because like you just mentioned, you've been in the best shape of your life for the last 2 years. Yep. So what's allowing you to stay there? We'll talk a little bit about how you got here, but your numbers right now, a lot of people don't believe me when I tell you. I pulled them up. You're on 510 grams of carbs a day and over 3,500 calories a day. And I'm not going to make you pull your shirt up, but trust me, he has a well-defined six-pack that I get in check-in photos every week. So let's talk a little bit about how we got there, right? Because we had to diet you down initially. Yep. And then we went through a reverse diet. And you probably had never heard of a reverse diet prior to that, or maybe you had,
It was different.
It was just something that didn't work. It was just bullshit, right? It was just, yeah, exactly. Kind of like the flexible dieting, right? It was the thing that people who aren't in the bodybuilding community believe in, but it doesn't really work. And we put you through a reverse diet, and I will tell you, you were one of the best responses I've ever seen. And the reason for that I believe, now having worked with a lot of other people, is a lot of individuals who competed when they were younger or who yo-yo dieted repeatedly when they were younger, meaning they would diet for 10 or 12 weeks for a wedding. Then they diet for 16 weeks to get ready for a summer vacation. Or like you, repeated shows, it really does a number on your metabolism because you diet for, say, 16 weeks. But a lot of these people then overfeed themselves and overeat in 1 to 2 weeks right afterwards. They're back up at the weight they were 16 weeks ago. But when you're in a deficit, you're doing metabolic damage. So if you think of that as 16 weeks of dieting and only 2 weeks of metabolic rehabilitation, but now you're back at the same weight, well, now what do you want to do? You want to cut again. Yeah. But you're leaving that situation with what I call like negative 14 weeks of equity, because essentially you dieted 14 weeks longer than you adequately fed yourself, and now you want to diet again because these people go off after their shows and things like that, right? Yeah. Not that you did that exactly. We've talked about it, and it sounds like you kept things a little bit more in control, but you see people all the time right after their shows, or if they're getting ready for a wedding, they go on their honeymoon, and they've gained all the weight back by the end of their honeymoon week or whatever it is, right? It's exactly what you said. People diet for success, not to be successful. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest flaws. So what has kind of allowed it to be so much more sustainable this time?
Yeah, so I would say it's just knowing the program and kind of how it works. So you started it by stripping things down. We went, like, my goal was to get shredded, and I got shredded.
Yep.
But I also know what it feels like to be shredded and depleted, and we did that.
So
and
you worked temporarily.
And the goal was always to, okay, strip the fat down, because you got to do that to strip the fat down.
You do.
So strip the fat down, and then we'll build the muscle up.
Yep.
And then now how I look at it is like you're filling a balloon. So you have to kind of empty that balloon.
But you don't want to overfill it.
Right. You don't want to, so
because it'll pop.
So you empty the balloon. So we'll do, now it's only like 2 or 3 weeks if I want to get shredded. So completely empty the balloon, and then we fill it up and just see how close we can get it to popping. And once it starts to pop, okay, cool. Hey, spilled over a little bit. Let's cut again.
Let's pull it back just a little bit, and you're right where you want to be.
It's not like the spikes. It's like this very gradual. Like right now, though, really, it's like we've been consistently
we've been around
calorie,
3,500 with 500 plus carbs for
dialed.
a couple years.
So it's what would you say, like threading the needle right now.
Exactly. You're right in that position where you're never lacking energy. I don't think you ever feel depleted or anything, but you stay shredded, and that's where everyone needs to find. But it takes a little bit of work to find that spot. And
we've got data, we've got experience.
There you go, the data, right? You know me, I keep spreadsheets and spreadsheets and spreadsheets, and that's what's allowed us to pinpoint that position. But if you can do that, you're set for the rest of your life now.
Right. Now we're just having fun with it.
It's short-term work to put in so that you can literally look and feel the way you want for the rest of your life, regardless of the scenario that you're faced with. So
I'm never that thought of falling out of shape is just non-existent.
That's awesome.
And that was not the case before I started this.
Exactly. When you were doing the other stuff. Yeah, 100%. So let's discuss a little bit about some of the foods you're eating right now, right? We keep talking about you're on 3,500 calories, 500 plus carbs. What does that look like?
Yeah, so I'll walk you through kind of a typical day. So I'll start with one of those Dave's Killer Bread bagel.
Yeah.
I eat these cat cookies from Trader Joe's.
Yeah, I see those. I know that's always your number one carb.
Yeah, it's like my guilty pleasure in the morning.
Yeah.
Cat cookies at Trader Joe's. And then I'll have sometimes a couple rice cakes or something like that, and I'll go work out.
But you're choosing some things that you enjoy and some things that are like filling and smart choices, right? Some of those are intended for indulgence, and some of those are like the rice cakes. Like nobody probably wants to eat rice cakes. They'd probably rather eat another 20 cat cookies.
And the reason
but it's finding that balance.
Yeah, and it's because they're quick, easy carbs without fats. And so I'm saving my fats for later in the day.
Yeah, so if you want to have steak or if you want to have whatever else, right? You've learned what works for you.
Exactly. Yep. And I've also learned I can be more responsible through the day. So that's breakfast, and then I'll go work out. On the way to work, I'll grab freaking gas station protein bar. Yeah. Little Metrics protein bar. And then right now.
And I love that because that's something realistic that anybody is that the perfect thing. Could you have probably, meal prepped a Tupperware dish if you were 25 years old and have that ready? Yeah, but you got a couple kids, you got a wife, you got a successful business.
And I got a lot of calories to eat.
And you got a lot of calories to eat. So you're going to stop at the gas station and you're going to grab a 400 calorie MedRx bar, and that's going to get you through until whenever, right?
Yep, exactly. And then right now, my wife actually helps me prep food. So she'll do like chicken and rice and beef and rice. So that'll be my meals at work. Yeah. Sometimes too, I'll make a turkey sandwich. Use some low-fat cheese.
Right, yeah. But you can improv, and it doesn't have to be chicken and rice. One day it can be a turkey sandwich with regular bread on it, and you're not like tripping out like you're
zero change. I don't feel any
guilt, no guilt associated with it. Oh, it's bread, right? Instead of my rice I'm supposed to be eating.
Exactly. And then I'll get home and kind of analyze where my calories are at. A lot of times I've got a lot left. I'll do the Trader Joe's mac and cheese.
Yeah,
that stuff's bomb. I have that almost every night.
That stuff's awesome. It's 270 calories for the whole pack.
Yeah. So doing mac and cheese, and then she's actually started making me meals. So we have fajitas. And
great.
Like the real fajitas. It's
not like fake fajitas.
No, it's tortillas. Yeah. Like flour tortillas, the white flour tortillas. Yeah. We'll make chicken because it's more lean. And then veggies, cheese, forbidden dairy and gluten in that one.
So you nailed it right there, right? You said like regular white flour tortillas, but then you mentioned, but she's doing chicken because it's more lean. And then you mentioned the cheese. Now, if you were dicing up fatty cuts of ribeye or something, you can't have it. So you're making the swaps.
Well, depending on where my calories are for the day.
Right, exactly.
So if I had 2 chicken and rice meals and everything else, I've only got like 20 grams of fat that I've used.
So maybe you want steak that night.
If I have 40 left, I got 40 to use. And that's where I use the end of the day to kind of backtrack the math on it.
Right.
And that's where, like, dude, if I've got 100 grams of carbs left and my fats and my proteins are spent, I will have Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah, why not?
Like, there's no guilt in that.
And
I
again,
do it all the time.
Just to address this, you obviously do regular labs and things like that.
Yes.
And living this way, and I know we've talked about it, the majority of your diet is not Sour Patch Kids. I don't want people to think that. No, yeah. But with being able to include those things, it's not like you've seen this massive, because I think people all the time go, oh, well, he's eating those things and he still looks good, but it's terrible for him. But it's not like your doctor is coming to you going like, hey man, your numbers are going completely out of whack.
They actually got better.
They got better.
They got better. And they got better after we like first started. And that's when I was like testing it. I'm like, I'm going to eat a shit ton of candy.
Yeah.
Cause I want to see, like, is this going to throw my glucose off all stuff? No, the blood work came back great.
I know.
And I think because I was so diligent about keeping the fats low and those manage the hormones. So that debunked a lot of stuff for me.
And I love that you do that, because I think so many people will fall back on like, well, yeah, he looks good, but he's not healthy on the inside. And they just say that and they don't have anything to back it up. And I'm like, trust me, I've worked with enough people who have lost weight eating regular foods in a balanced way. They all not only see weight loss, they see improvements in virtually every health marker. Yeah. Even some of my clients who eat worse than you, they're still losing weight. They're still seeing improvements in health markers because it's better than what they were doing before.
Right. And I think we're more resilient. And I'll get that same thing of like, well, it's just not impacting you because you're not seeing it.
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah.
Well, I have blood work. And then when I mentioned I have blood work, they're like, yeah, but it's your genetics. I'm like,
yeah,
there we go.
That's what people will always, I mean,
like, trust me, it's not
I
genetics.
hear the same
I've
thing.
I've had bad blood work.
I get it at the gym. I go, oh, well, you look amazing, dude. You must have really good genetics. I pull out my phone. I show them my fat picture. Yeah. And I'm like, no, trust me, I don't.
Yeah. It's a very backhanded compliment.
Yeah, exactly.
You have good genetics. I'm like, no, trust me.
No, I put in work, bro. Yeah. Like I learned what works for me.
Right.
100%.
Right.
So how has your relationship with food changed since you started working with me? I'll be honest. I feel like it's gotten a lot better. I feel like this year especially, you've been able to travel a lot more. You have a lot less anxiety surrounding eating free foods and not tracking and things like that. What got you to that point? Like what kind of has allowed you to get there?
Yeah, so it really is like a series of breaking down old myths and habits, really, because they were hard habits.
Yeah.
Like, this is what this is.
That's what everybody says too.
First, I had to get over the food type, like the macros are really the only thing that matters for my goals specifically.
Right.
And then once I got that dialed, that's building trust with myself and with, this type of dieting or nutrition. And then it got to trusting myself with, okay, I have a good idea of what's in what food. If I screw up, I know how quickly I can fix that and then kind of which direction to screw up in. So
that right there, which direction to screw up in.
You're either going to undereat or overeat.
Yep.
And so if I know, I find it easier to undereat, which you'd think, well, yeah, but wouldn't you want to overeat? Like, no, not necessarily. If I'm on vacation, I might go most of the day without eating and then I'm not going to worry about dinner.
You're doing stuff, you're busy.
I might overeat at dinner
a little bit, yeah, but
likely I'm just going to overeat my fats. Carbs are probably going to be low and proteins are going to be low. Yeah. And that day is an off day.
But you're not gaining fat because your calories are still in check.
Calories didn't go over.
Your calories didn't go over, right? You weren't drinking Mai Tais and margaritas all day, right?
Right. And I know over the next couple of days, carbs will fill back up and I probably usually don't even fall out of that shape. But just whatever direction.
I know you come back from vacation now, dude. You look just as good as when you left for vacation.
Yeah, and I think part of that too is training myself mentally to be like, hey, it's okay if you do this. You're not going to fall off track. And not being afraid. Because I think being afraid is...
You psych yourself out.
Yeah, and then if 100%. You do that, you give yourself extra pressure, and then you just have this, pardon my French, fuck it mentality.
Yeah.
Of like, you know what? This is too much for me.
I can't do it. Fuck it. I'm just going to enjoy myself. When I get back home, I'll get back on track. Yeah. And people just endlessly repeat that yo-yo cycle forever and ever.
The weirdest thing about the macro dieting is that you don't have to do that.
No, you don't have to always get back on track when you're leaving. You just have to understand what the right choices to make while you're on that trip were. And you come back and you're like, hey, I had a really fun time and I still look fucking fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You don't ever have to worry about, like, you don't have to fall off.
Right, which means
weird. It's a weird concept because with diet, it's so much like you've got a cheat meal. If you overdo a cheat meal, then you've screwed up. Failure.
Right.
It's not the case.
And there's no sense of failure, and there's no needing to get back on track because you're not screwing up. Yep. Right. And that's the key. So you don't have the feeling of failure. You don't have the anxiety. You don't have the guilt, and you get the physique to go with it.
Yep.
So it's like the best of all worlds.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's great. So run me through kind of your current activity level. I know a lot of people probably won't believe this, but we don't have you doing a lot of cardio right now. We've actually cut the cardio way down from where it was, and you're still on 3,500 calories a day. So what does your daily life look like? Are you moving a lot? Are you behind a computer? I know you run a super successful business. You have a family. I'm sure you're playing with the kids, but what does a day in the life of Matt Weber look like?
Yeah, so I'll break down the gym activities because I think that's, everyone probably thinks I live in the gym.
Yeah,
I can tell you I don't. Right now, I mean, we're shooting for 4 to 5 lifts a week. Those lifts are like 45 minutes. Right. It's not even an hour.
No.
And a total cumulative of 1 hour of structured
maybe
cardio.
10 to 15. Yeah. An
hour like 15 minutes after
an hour of cardio per week, just so people, not per day, just so people are clear. You're doing an hour per week.
Cumulative. Hour per week. And then I work, for the most part, an office job. Yeah. And like as far as physical activity exerted, I'm sitting down all day.
It's not much.
For the most part, I'm sitting down all day. I can't say I'm running around all the time. For the most part,
you're not you're not on your feet all the time. You're not a real estate agent. You're not a server who's running around all day. Right.
It's pretty inactive. And the thing about it too is that you never know what kind of day I'm going to have, what kind of problems I'm going to be solving that day. Sometimes it's super structured, and I know when I'm eating my meals and this, that, and sometimes I'm like, I got to fix this loan. Everyone's calling me. I forgot to eat for 6 hours.
Yeah, and you got to stop at Chipotle or something.
Yeah, right? Exactly. And so I'll have extremely stressful days and then days that aren't.
Yeah.
And so I can work the food around that.
And that's what's nice about the flexible dieting. Right? Is that it's not like, oh, I missed meal number 4 at 2 p.m. because my Tupperware dish was at the office and I was out at whatever. Right. You can stop at Chipotle, Wildflower, or whatever, pick something up and know that you're not going off the rails and know what you're getting. Exactly. And the only other thing for being more active right now is with racing motocross. I mean, every Saturday or Sunday, I'm doing some sort of training where I am exerting a ton of energy, but that's also why we've ramped things up. We have, so much. I don't think we would really be down that much more in the numbers. Maybe 20 grams of carbs. Right. Maybe. Yeah, if you weren't doing that. But also if I wasn't, you probably would have replaced it with doing something else active on the weekends anyway. I would be at the gym lifting another day, doing more cardio. 100%. But it's not like this crazy amount you'd think. But it's nice that, honestly, like, I kind of want to touch on that. It's nice you can do the motocross and, like, you don't have to go to gym on Saturday. You don't have to, like, you feel like, hey, it's okay for me to not get a weight training workout in. Just because it's not weight training, I'm still active. I'm still doing it, but like, you're having fun with it. It's not like, oh, it's chest day again today, right? Your weekends are pretty much yours to do with what you want, right? And a lot of freedom. And that's my intention with everybody, is that I want to provide guidance and structure, but that guidance and structure needs to be built around your life. If I try to push you into a box as opposed to building the box around you, you're eventually not going to fit in it one of these days, and you're going to bust out, and that's when most people fall off. Yeah, and also with that, you've got the other side of it of, like, the diet part. At this point, it's very easy. So the market that I'm in right now, it's all over the place. You know, it's a down market right now. Literally. I'm just going to say it's slow. Yeah. Like, I know most lenders won't say it's slow. It's slow right now. Yeah. If they're saying otherwise, they're lying. They're full of shit. Yeah. And so the more things you can have successful in your life, easy wins, like following a diet, the better. The more positive you're going to feel about everything you're doing. Yeah. Exactly. The more motivated. So if you had to meal prep on top of a stressful market and having a family and all these other things, what's going to happen is either A, you're going to feel burnt out as hell and you're sticking to it, or B, you're going to fail at your diet. You're going to fall off. When you fail at something else, everything else feels bad. Yeah, you feel bad. You can't live my business is failing, my diet is failing, my everything is failing. Whereas if you can continue to control the things that are in your control, when the other things that are out of your control, like the housing market, unfortunately, is going down, you're going to feel a lot more confident about those things that are out of your control. Yeah. Because you're at least making positive moves with what's in your control. And I think that goes a long way, especially for business owners. And I think a lot of people underestimate that or take too long to learn the value of that. Hey, look, right now I can't help that my industry is down, but you know what I can help? I can help how I look, how I feel, how much content I create, how much of this I'm doing, how my body looks, how my health, I'm showing up for my family, how I'm showing up for my girlfriend, my wife, my kids, all these other things. If you're doing good, this one's a C. This is going to, like school, it's going to lift that up. You nailed it. So you can't have, if you hold yourself to this standard on your diet and you can't stick to it, that's a C. Yeah. If
if these 2 C's cause you stress, you're bringing that home to your marriage, that's a C.
That's going to turn into a C. Yeah, and it just snowballs into everything.
But if you have more A's,
it's
going to pull the C's up.
Yeah, I like that analogy a lot. Yeah, I like that a lot. I'm going to use that. So we are probably in the 2 industries that have more misinformation than any other industry online. I'm in nutrition. You're in mortgages. I am so sorry because I know you deal with as much as what I deal with. So I kind of want to talk about, because I feel like each of us is sort of a beacon of light in our industry, right? That just tries to guide people in the right direction. How do you try your best to kind of lead people and sift through all the misinformation? Because whether it's people predicting mortgage rates, trying to predict what the market's going to do, I'm sure it becomes incredibly frustrating because these people are willing to say stuff to get their videos clicked on, but in reality, it's not what people need and what people can use. What you put out, and this is not me trying to make you feel, what you put out is genuinely useful information that people can take and apply to their own life. So what's the thought process behind you creating content?
It's exactly that. It makes it harder to create content because I will not put something out that is fear selling, that is super clickbait, that is misleading, because anyone can hit record on their phone or have a nice camera and be saying complete bullshit. And I see that a lot, and I see that as a problem. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I see that as a problem in our business, and I'm putting myself in the consumer's shoes of what do I believe?
Right.
One person's saying interest rates are definitely dropping in 6 months. The other person's saying they're going to stay high and the housing market's going to crash. Yeah. And then you've got someone talking about, hey, I've got the lowest interest rates. It's this number, but why does this number look different? There's so much confusing information out there.
Yeah.
And in our business, it's such a large transaction. The one thing that I've learned over the past almost 12 years, the one thing people are looking for is trust. And so I know when I'm creating content, how do I put content information out there it might not be the sexiest information, but it needs to be educational. It needs to have value, a call to action, and it has to be honest.
Right. Yeah. No, and I'm the same way. I know it's funny because we go back and forth, Derek and I, about what we're willing to say or title videos and things like that. Because you'll see a video pop off for 20 million views because they titled it something inflammatory. Right. And I'm like, I just can't do it. I can't bring myself to say that because I feel like it takes away from my credibility. And I feel like all I really want to do, I used to be over 300 pounds. I used to be fat as shit. I get it. I just want to help other people who feel like they're in that same lost position. And I think you just want to help people do the same thing, right? You're not trying, you're the last, you never push with anything. You're never like, hey, you need to sign with me. You need to do this. You really just try to educate people, right? And that's it. And then you want them to make the best decision, even if it doesn't happen to be with you. And I tell people the same thing. Look, if I'm not the right fit, I promise you, if we have a conversation, I'll be able to steer you in the right. I've been in this industry long enough that I will know somebody who is the right fit for you. Right. Right. And I feel like that's all that we try to do. But what's funny is very rarely do people who do that ever pop off. Right. But what's funny is even though we're not going viral, I feel like we're still impacting a lot more people than the people who are going viral. And we're impacting them in a much more positive way than those individuals who are maybe misleading somebody to make a decision that they shouldn't have even made in the first place. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And it's keeping your audience small, but not necessarily small, but engaged and trusting. You're the person, you're the go-to. Right. I'm the mortgage guy, you're the nutrition guy. Right. And your audience knows that about you. So they trust, and they don't want to see the clickbait stuff. And I know that for a fact. So my page is mostly business information for either real estate agents or for direct consumers that are going to be buying houses. Mm-hmm. And then I share a lot of my personal life stuff because I like keeping an open book, and actually I get a ton of business from the moto community. Stuff. From the personal stuff. And you do a great job with that. So hey, I've got this thing in common with this person, but it'd be really whack if I did that and then also had super clickbait stuff. So I'm like, you can trust me is basically my message. Yes. And as soon as you start going down that path, people are going to lose trust in you. Yeah. And you might manipulate a couple of people, but that's going to be pretty short-lived. And I think the reason that you and I have been in the industries as long as what we have is because we are just honest and forthcoming with people. Simply can't do it. You simply couldn't do it if it's if I say this might get a bunch of views or clicks or whatever. Right. You couldn't do it. It's not worth it. Because then know that your loyal clients will be like, dude, what's he doing? Well, and anyone I sign up off that video, I've misled them.
Right.
It's like they're signing up with a misconception, and what am I going to deliver to them when they start working with me, right? So, first off, I really appreciate you coming out. Thank you so much for everything. You are fantastic. You're like an open book with everything you're willing to share. So I appreciate it. Thank you for doing the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate you guys watching. Feel free to comment below any questions for Matt or myself. I feel like this is probably going to have a lot of benefit for a lot of people. One more thing I wanted to touch on, and I appreciate you being willing to talk about this. I know you posted in October that you're 3 years sober.
Yep.
Incredibly impressive. You should be proud of yourself. I'm beyond proud of you. I know I've actually reached out to you myself about the same thing and how you went about, getting to that level of sobriety and not needing that in your life. Are you willing to kind of talk about that a little bit? What prompted that decision? And then what you've seen in your life since you made that decision?
Absolutely. I'm always going to be an open book with this. And my whole thing there is if it helps one person.
100%.
Even if it helps one person.
Yeah.
So I'll start with my relationship with alcohol. So I was, high school, college, typical, go out and party on the weekends.
Yep.
Like very normal. You would get really drunk, but everyone in college was doing that. But it was the weekends. It would never go into the week, and that was pretty normal. And then graduate college, and I was drinking less and less. Mm-hmm. Well, where things started to get out of hand was I didn't start casually drinking until I had kids. And then I started getting into casually drinking wine. It was like, oh, this is nice. This takes the edge off.
Yeah. At the end of the day, right?
Yeah. Before it was like I was drinking because everyone was doing
You're
it.
You're at a party.
Fun. Yeah, it's fun to go get drunk. It's a good time.
Now you're using it to de-stress.
Yeah, I'd never used it like that.
Yeah.
And so with my job, it quickly became a very easy coping mechanism. And I didn't realize how quickly it was slipping away. And so it just progressed into a glass, 2 glasses, 3 glasses, a couple bottles a night.
Well, your tolerance goes up. You start needing more and more to get the same level of relaxation. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it got bad to the point where like it would be Thursday through Sunday, and Monday I would have like panic attacks, like such bad anxiety.
The scary Sundays.
And then I would survive Monday.
Yeah.
And then through the week I'd be looking forward to Thursday because then
you were going to start drinking again.
Yeah. Yeah. And that just kind of got progressively worse. And at the same time, I would say, I don't know if I could get a time frame for it, but I'd been working with a counselor, like a therapist.
Okay.
And he probably knew for a year and a half that I was an alcoholic and I was going to have to take action.
Yeah.
And he finally got it out of me. He did this assessment with me, and we start going through these things, and I didn't realize how dishonest I was being with myself. It was things like, do you ever drink alone? I'm like, no. It's like, have you ever hidden your drinking? I'm like, no. And then I'm like, well, I was just fixing something at my cabin, drinking wine by myself. That's alone drinking. And then it was like a little time before that, I ran out of wine, and I knew my mom had a bottle of gin somewhere, and I didn't want Krista to see me.
Yeah.
Because I need to keep my buzz going. So I went and took a swig of gin without her knowing to kind of hide it from her. I was like, shit, I hide my drinking too.
Hiding my drinking.
And so I started checking all these boxes of like, if you're an alcoholic, and I realized most of them I initially lied to myself on. Wow. And what I had to look at was the consequences, because it was going at a stable, progressively worse rate. Yeah. I didn't have consequences at the time, aside from really bad anxiety and just this cloudy feeling. But what I got out of the counselor session when I decided to just be completely done with it was the consequences aren't here yet, and I've got too much to lose. And so in that office, I had to make the decision that I am an alcoholic and I can never drink again. I did go to AA classes, maybe like 5 of them, just because I was like, I'm done with this.
Was that helpful to go to those 5?
It was.
Okay.
It was. I wasn't sure if I needed it. I can honestly say I probably didn't, but it was really cool to go in and to see how relatable these other people were.
Right. And that's kind of what I assumed, right? Is that there are other
people
people
alone in it.
Right. There are
and
other
I thought
people
I'd go in there and it's a bunch of crackheads. The first one I go into, I see some dude that I would see at the gym at like 4. He would always beat me to the gym.
Right. He was busting acid for him. Probably a successful business owner and all these things. Yeah. People think that all alcoholics are degenerates. And
so then that was like, okay, this is different than I thought.
Right.
So that helped me to feel relatable. But for the most part, when I was completely honest with myself, it was done at that point. And there's not like a single, and there hasn't been for the past 3 years, any sort of temptation or anything like that.
And have you worked with anyone continuously to help you stay away from that stuff? Have you had any, I know you just said no temptation, but have you put any measures in place of accountability with somebody, whether it's your counselor that you mentioned earlier, to make sure that or did the temptation just go what
it was gone.
You realized like, yo, I'm not going to lose my family. This is actually a lot worse than I thought. And you just made the decision.
Yeah. It was really weird. When I was done, and it had never,
that's impressive.
It had never come back. The only times it comes back, it's the weirdest thing. Like it would never come back in regular conscious being awake. But if I'm around alcohol, like I was at a bachelor party a year ago, if I'm around alcohol and partying, I'm totally cool being around it. You'll never catch me drinking it, but I'll get what's called drinking dreams. And you'll like be in your dream and you'll fuck up and you'll drink in your dream.
Funny.
So it's like in my dream, I drank, I failed sobriety. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh,
thank God.
It's whenever I'm around it a bunch.
Crazy.
And apparently it's a thing.
That's funny.
And then like the kind of cool thing about that is that it puts you in check. So if I was out around drinking, I have this nightmare to remind me.
Yeah.
And then it's like,
of how awful you feel when
you wake up and you're like, oh shit. Yeah. I'm glad I don't drink.
That's interesting.
All of a sudden you're just out of nowhere giving yourself gratitude for what you have and what you've accomplished.
100%. So, and this is the last thing I'll ask you, but what are some of kind of the improvements or changes you've seen in your life since we're about 3 years and a month sober now?
Yep.
You know, how has your business improved? Has your relationships, what have you seen?
So business, yes. A lot of the anxiety is gone. And there's this.
Is that probably the most noticeable? You've said anxiety a handful of times.
Yes.
Is that probably the most noticeable
When I was
change?
drinking, if I thought about my future, there was a dark cloud.
Right.
That dark cloud completely went away.
And I think
I'm not worried about the future.
I think that could resonate with a lot of people because I think that a lot of people just think they're anxious.
Yeah.
And I think in the last 3 to 4 years, alcohol consumption has gone through the roof, and so has anxiety med prescriptions.
Yep.
And I think there's a direct correlation. I think people underestimate not only what alcohol does to you physiologically and how it increases anxiety, but in how you put things off that you need to deal with in the moment because you're drinking to numb yourself from them. And you wake up the next morning now with even more problems. On top of the physiological anxiety that alcohol brings about, now you didn't deal with the shit you need to deal with yesterday, and now you've got double the shit to deal with today, and you drank, and you feel like shit, and it just snowballs.
Yeah, and with the drinking too, I mean, my wife would have to deal with it. You know, like there was times when I got too drunk and then I would just say stupid shit. And so who knows how far that can test a relationship.
Right.
And then do you really want to be around someone that's always has a dark cloud?
To be,
You know, and so that was another thing too, is when I quit drinking, I was like, I never have to worry about saying something stupid when I'm drunk. Because stupid shit happens to people all the time. I swear. Like a lot of times, like
I know.
It's like
Derry's nodding.
Someone was out partying, and it's like, oh, they did this, but this didn't really happen.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, there's trust lost in the relationship. Like I can keep such a close pulse on my relationship with my wife and with my kids. I'm not like it's really weird, but like, and I'll even check in with my wife sometimes too, because we have such a good relationship. I'm like, we're good, right?
Yeah.
Because I read divorce decrees at work. So I see, I see this shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, I honestly feel like I never have to worry about that because I'm so in tune with it.
That's awesome.
I'm not worried about screwing it up because the one thing that could screw it up is out of my life now.
Yeah. That's really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. And again, I appreciate you just coming out and talking about everything. So again, thank you for everything. And I think that's pretty much it.